Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be exploring the science of reading and more focused on our middle schools, right? So there's this whole push for the science of reading. And a lot of times it's more focused to our elementary friends. However, today we're going to discuss how this can be also completed in the middle school setting. It's going to be more geared towards our ELA friends, but it can be used across content. So a lot of these different strategies you're going to be able to take and use within that middle school classroom. You'll notice that we're going to be focusing on the reading rope. So here are all of the different categories that you can find on that reading rope to really encourage and build strong readers in our classroom. If you have any questions or need anything, my email is also found on these slides. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and share this resource with everybody. This link will also be available after today. So if you need access to this resource, just let me know, and I'm happy to share it with you. But right here it is. I'm also going to add it right into the YouTube chat. So if you need that, it's going to be found in the YouTube chat. I'll probably also add it onto the YouTube description as well. Okay, so again, there's the link if you need access to the slides, to the resources. There are a lot of hyperlinks built right into this activity as well. So first, I'm just going to share a little bit about me. My name is Stephanie, and I first started off as an intervention specialist. In my first year of teaching, I went through the Orton-Gillian certification program. So it was a year long. It was kind of stressful because I was a first-year teacher, and I had to get this certification to support my basic reading groups as an intervention specialist. However, I learned a lot, and I really fell in love with Orton-Gillian. I fell in love with basic reading because I was a struggling reader as well. In second grade, I was diagnosed with a learning disability. And so I really struggled with reading and writing and all of the different skills that we're going to kind of explore today. And when it came to you learning about Orton-Gillian, learning about basic reading, it clicked with me. It clicked, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching myself how to read as an adult. And so again, some of these strategies that you might learn if you struggled with reading might be really helpful to you as well. So again, we've got the slides, we've got the resources, they're hyperlinked. And I was a fifth grade teacher, so I was in that middle school range, and then I was an instructional coach. So again, a lot of my strategies can be probably used in the elementary, but you might need to adapt them just a little bit, but they are going to be focused more at that middle school range. So the first part is basic reading. So when we're thinking about basic reading, there's a couple different things that we can do. The first one is I like to use Google or Doodle. All you need for this activity is a blank Google slide. Okay, you don't even have to have the words Google or Doodle on here. And what happens is you set a timer for 5 minutes. So for example, I would go in here and I would create a Google Classroom assignment. Kami works great with Google Classroom, Canvas, Microsoft, and even Schoology. And so once I'm in my classroom, I can go into coursework, create a Kami assignment. The reason you want to create it as a Kami assignment is because of this thing called Class View. Class View is going to be allowing us to see all of our students' work at the same time. So right here, I'm going to call this Google or Doodle. And I'm going to go ahead and assign this activity to my learners. And so what happens is my students are able to come into their assignment. So they go into their Google Classroom, and they go into that class, and they go to classwork. They're going to go to Google or Doodle. And again, your students are going to have 5 minutes. And within those 5 minutes, your students are going to go into that assignment, and they will either Google about the topic or they're going to doodle it. Okay, so this can help in social studies class if we're learning about ancient Egypt. This can help in science if you're doing potential energy. Math class if you're teaching about fractions. Your students are able to come in here, Google it if they don't know what fractions are, if they don't know what ancient Egypt is, or they can just begin to doodle. So they can say, oh, I know this right here is the numerator or denominator or whatever. They can go into detail using the tools within Kami. Students can also, so maybe you have one student that draws just like that. Students could also come into this document And maybe this student, when they're in their Google Classroom and they again go into their classwork and click on that Google or Doodle, this student might come in and begin to work, but they might need the help of a scaffold. And so they might come into Add Media, they might grab a graphic organizer, and they might compare two different things. Or this student might grab a mind map, right? And so there's a ton of different ways that students can add their thoughts and ideas onto the paper. So they are able to write their ideas and thoughts out on paper. And what I love about this activity is if you use this with Kami, is you are able to have your students come in, and when they're working on this assignment, you are able to go to that assignment, hit Open Class View. And what Class View allows, it allows you to see all of your students working at the exact same time. And so then I can give feedback. I can support my students and see what background knowledge do they have, what background knowledge is lacking. So right here with that student that we were just working on with fractions, I can give them a sticker and say, hey, great job on this. This student over here, I can go to Add Media and grab maybe a graphic organizer and drop it right onto their screen to support them if they need that scaffold. Maybe some students really struggle with Googling. So I could come in here with my annotation bank and I could add in some type of resource or video. And I could say, hey, I want you to watch the first minute of this. Okay, we're about to learn about touching Spirit Bear, but it would really help if you just watch this first part of this video. Or maybe I have a graphic organizer. So again, I can help my students and I can drag and drop stickers, memes, anchor charts, videos, audio clips, whatever might be helpful for that student. Okay, so again, we might be learning. They're going to add their doodles and their Google notes that they do. And I'm going to be able to see all of their ideas firsthand. And I can come in and leave feedback, provide ideas, give my students, if they needed that anchor chart, okay, what do you notice about this, right? And they're able to doodle and take some notes. This is allowing me to see their background knowledge and being able to know, okay, what is it that they understand? What is it that they're still struggling with? Another activity is this graffiti wall, where this can be found in the Kami library. The Kami library has over 2,000 resources completely free for you to use. And what I love to do with this activity is, again, I can open this up into Kami, and I could add a video or a resource that I want my students to watch or complete. And with the graffiti wall, my students are able to think about how they might have seen this word in context. So I'm able to kind of say, okay, here's maybe the vocabulary word. How have you seen stormy in context? So I can add that word using maybe a text box. And then my students can give examples using this as a collaborative document. So very similar, I go into my Google Classroom, create a Kami assignment. However, this time, instead of giving everybody their own, so I'm going to do graffiti wall. Instead of doing everybody has their own copy of this activity, I am able to have every single student, I'm going to go to the Kami library this time. I'm going to type in graffiti wall. And once I have that up and ready to go, I can then come in and assign it to everyone has one copy. And so what that means is all of my students will be on the same copy of the document. They're going to be able to write their ideas, their thoughts, all on this graffiti wall. So again, this is a collaborative activity. All of my students, so here we go with my students' accounts. They go ahead to their Google Classroom. They open that up with Kami. And with this graffiti wall, they're going to be able to think about words or content if you're teaching about content soon. And they're going to be able to think about those stormy words and explain when it's been stormy, right? They can explain in their own ideas and thoughts. Over here, if I grab another student, so student Olivia, again, they go into their Google Classroom. They're going to pop open that graffiti wall. They're on the same document. They can see student Stephanie and what that student said. And what I love about using Kami with my students is right here is this student's work. They can't move or delete another student's idea. However, they could maybe grab the stickers or some type of tool to say, oh, I love that idea, right? And so they can build background knowledge off of each other, thinking about how they have seen different vocab words in content or in context. They can also think about the topic and use this graffiti wall to write down when this has happened to them or a similar experience that they have noticed. And as a teacher, you'll just click open with Kami. You're going to get a message. And what you click when you get this message is you get this icon, and you're going to just say, hold on, let's give it a second to load. Open with Kami. And you're going to get a message, and you're just going to want to click on the option that allows that shared file. So again, I click open with Kami. Let's see if it will work this time. And once it loads, you're going to open up that shared file. And so then you can see, I'm going to go ahead and click this one and just hit open with Kami. You can see your students' work. You are able to delete because you are the teacher. You're the owner of the document. So if I needed to delete any of these icons, I can delete any of those icons or resources that are on here for my students. All right, awesome. I'm going to close out of some of these tabs because now we're ready for 2 truths and a lie. So again, with your background knowledge, you can have your students come up with 2 truths and a fib about the content that they're about to learn or a vocabulary word. So again, if you are teaching some type of vocabulary word or about the content that they're about to learn, students will just come in here. You'll assign it very similar to how we did with Google or Doodle. So it's going to be a Google Classroom assignment again. Another way that you can assign using Google Classroom is over here where it says share. I can save it to my Google Drive. And then once I save this to my Google Drive, I can create an assignment. And so right in Kami, you're able to do 2 truths and a fib. I can make a copy for every single student, or we could all be on the same collaborative document. Each student comes up with 2 truths and a fib on that document, and then we can work together to decide. The only difference is when you assign it this way is you have to choose 4. And when you choose 4, you need to select the class that you are assigning this to. So again, you're able to come in, assign different work to your students, and then I'm able to use that class view. We can have discussions, and I'm able to say, okay, guys, what do you think when we're doing this activity? And I can give their feedback, their thoughts, their ideas on what they think when I come in here to 2 truths and a fib. And I look at this and I can see all of their responses coming in. And so then we can, as a class, have that discussion. And again, we're building background knowledge for either a vocab word or the content that we're about to learn. So I want you to kind of pause and just think. So feel free to pause this video. Think about which one of these activities are you maybe going to try to build up background knowledge. These activities are great at the start of a unit to get your students excited about learning. So again, there's 3 different types. Think about which one you might want to try in your classroom. You can rinse and repeat these activities. For example, Google and Doodle. I could do it before the topic and again after the topic. I could do it for multiple units to introduce the unit. So again, think about how you might use these different activities to build up background knowledge within your students. Now we're going to dive into vocabulary, okay? So vocabulary is another piece when it comes to the science of reading. And a lot of times our students struggle with vocabulary. And so they're going to understand with reading comprehension and they're going to struggle with some other skills. And so when we have vocabulary words, you might use a prediction story. And so with this prediction story, it is just a Google slide. Okay, so here's my Google slide. And right in these boxes is where I can type in different vocabulary words that are going to be in the story, in the article if I'm teaching science or social studies. And so again, all of these boxes will be filled out with different vocabulary words from the upcoming article that I might think my students might not know or they might struggle with. Students are going to look at these words in that box and they are going to make a prediction, okay? So that by using those words, they're going to use a prediction about what the story is about. So again, I come in here and I type in the different words that my students might need to know. One tip that I love to do is I like to use AI. So I might use ChatGPT and I might say, we are a 6th grade class about to read Touching Spirit Bear. Okay, and I want my students to do this. Come up with, how many words did I have? 3, 4, 8. And so then I might do something like this, come up, with 24 vocabulary words written for this. Here we go. Here they come up. And actually, these are pretty good because before AI, we actually had these different words listed. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy. And I'm going to go ahead and just call this one Touching Spirit Bear. Okay, so here is the Touching Spirit Bear activity. We're going to try to build up that vocabulary word for our students. And now I'm just going to add these words right into these boxes. Okay, so I've got all of these different boxes that I am able to take from AI. And then I can just add them right in here by copying and pasting. Okay, and so again, my students are going to see all of these new words, and I'm going to show you a trick if they don't know what that word means, what you can do to scaffold and support them. But you might have to build up their metacognition skills just a little bit to help them know, hey, I don't know this word. What do? You use the dictionary tool in Kami. And so again, I can come in here, copy all of these different words, paste them into this box. And then my students can choose different words from here. And they're going to use these words to make a prediction about what they think the story is going to be about. Okay, so again, you're working on that vocab. You're helping your students really starting to understand, justify their learning. All right, let's see here. Should have had this all set, but I did want to show you live how I'm kind of taking this activity. I am now adding the words all into our boxes. Sometimes I like to choose more boxes because then I can say, oh, this word's actually better than that one, right? And you could even organize it maybe by different tiers too. Okay, so now that I've got my story all set, let's go ahead and try to reorganize these boxes just a little bit. There we go. So there we go. My students are going to be able to see those vocab boxes right here. And then they're going to be able to write their paragraph down below. Okay. And so once again, I go into my Google Classroom. We're going to make this a Kami assignment. Loving that class view, right? That's the reason I make this a Kami assignment, because I love that live feedback that's coming in. Touching Spirit Bear. And I'm going to go ahead and assign this to my students. And I'm just going to call this prediction story. Okay, again, you can assign it to all your students or just a few. I assign it to my students. I'm going to have that class view in order to monitor their work. And I'm going to be able to see the 7 words that they choose. You can have them highlight the words that they choose in their story. You can have your students come in and add in a thought or ideas, right? And so I'm going to open this up with Kami just so you can see what your students are going to be able to do. So here I am. I'm going to go over here to student Stephanie, back to their Google Classroom, and they're going to go into that prediction story. They're going to open that up right into Kami. Once my students open this up into Kami, there's a couple different things that can support their learning. Students can grab this dictionary tool and they can highlight any word that they need to, and the definition will pop up for them. So they can also listen to the word. Banishment. They can highlight and see that definition come alive in real time. So they have that support if they don't know what a certain word is. Once they have that word selected, your students then can use this text box and they can type their story down here. Your students can even highlight which words they use and where they use them at in their story. So as your students are writing, I can have them highlight key important parts of the story as they're working. And again, as their teacher, I'm able to go in and I can see how my students are doing by using that class view, and I'm able to monitor all of their work and see how they're doing on this activity. Okay. So again, that can be a great way to build background knowledge and kind of also provide your students with some upcoming vocabulary words that they are going to need to know when they get into this unit, when they get into this activity. So again, great activity for your students. You'll notice that some of these activities do combine. You don't have to teach these skills in isolation. So background knowledge, vocabulary, both of those parts can be kind of taught together. So also kind of think about different activities like that. Another one is infographics. So for this activity, what happens is students are going to be able to create some type of infographic, okay? So again, we're working on our vocabulary and they're going to summarize their article by creating an infographic. So they're going to point out key vocabulary words that maybe they didn't know. And again, building up that metacognition and having them go in and actually search for those words in that dictionary tool can be really, really helpful when we're working towards creating those graphics. This one is an app smash. And so what you're able to do is, I don't know why it's not loading, but it's a cute little pink template with some pigs on it. And so what you're able to do is you can have your students go over to Canva. They make their infographics. I'm just going to search infographic. There it is. It finally loaded, I think. And so there's maybe my infographic. I'm going to say I created this. They would type in their information, their keywords, all of those things. And once they're ready, they hit the share button and they click open with Kami. So again, the first step is they create. So that first step that your students are going to do is they're first going to join Canva. They explore examples. They have to create the theme, symbols, characters, connections, 6 pictures maybe to relevant. You know, you can take this, customize it for your own class. And then they have to then take that to Kami. So after they create, they click on that open with Kami button. And so once I click open with Kami, my students now have multimedia. So they're taking this learning to that next level. First they created, now they're ready to explain, justify using video, using audio. They put these little dots and they record their voice about explaining these different topics. They provide text to justify why they put this where they did. And then your students are able to then go in and add this assignment to your Google Classroom so then you can view all of their work and all of their infographics, or you can have them just quickly share. But again, having that one step of justification levels up the DOK level for your infographics. And again, they can kind of draw on top because it's saved in Canva too. So they can maybe draw, let me grab a different color. They can draw and explain connections. This again is taking it higher in that depth of knowledge to really support your students' learning on this activity to really help them begin to learn and explore their knowledge. The next one's a word quest. This is one of my favorite activities to do with students. You come up with vocabulary words over here. And again, the Google slide for this is right here where you can type, you can add additional pages if you need to. And all you have to do is type in the words. And so once you type in the words, again, you're ready to assign this to your students. So I can come in here and assign this activity to my students. We're going to be working on vocabulary. And so when it comes to this, I'm going to go ahead and go over to my Google Classroom. And once I'm in my Google Classroom, I'm going to be able to come in here and I'm going to create a Kami assignment. I'm going to call this word quest. Google Drive, and I'm going to find it in my most recent right there. So now that I've got my activity, every student's going to get their own copy of this activity. You could also have your students work in groups if you wanted to. So again, a lot of these activities are able for you to take them and decide how you want to assign them to your students. Now that I've assigned that activity to my students, they're going to go in and click this open with Kami button. So again, my students, they're going to log in, go to their Google Classroom, go over to their classwork, and there's that activity. And they're going to open this up into Kami. What they're going to do is they're going to see their vocabulary words over in this side. So for example, Maybe their vocab word is hill or mountain or something. Maybe we're working on landforms. Students are going to go to Add Media, grab this camera tool, and take a picture of the activity, the scavenger hunt, whatever they find, and they're going to add their example right there. Students then are going to justify and they're going to explain how this stapler is actually a hill, right? They're going to show, right? If you want to have your students videotape, they can justify by explaining. But again, they're going to use that voice or audio, or they can use text to explain their learning. Again, you'll be able to see a ton of different examples by using that class view button in your Google Classroom. And so then I'm going to be able to see how my students are responding to this assignment in real time to know, okay, they've got this or no, they don't got this, right? And so again, I'm going to be able to see their ideas, their thoughts come out. If your room is not well decorated, you can just have a pile of junk. So rather than having your students grab the stapler, you could just have a pile of random things laying around. Again, if your room is not, or if you don't want them like going around and doing a scavenger hunt. And again, you could have them work in different teams, or you could have them do like think and then they share together. You could also have them guess. So I could come over here and say, okay, what do you think this is? And I could just kind of maybe use the shapes tool, fill these shapes and hide these answers right here. And explain, okay, what do we think about this stapler, right? What do we think that is? And so we can use and reuse some of those activities to really help our students' understanding. Now we're ready for language structure. So language structure is where we're starting to kind of look into sentences and how they're organized. And so when we think about language structure, one of the activities is we might use this draw the parts of speech. Again, you just need a blank piece of paper. And you'll see here that I draw and then I write. Again, I created this in a Google slide. And so here's the Google slide. And then I can create that Kami assignment in my Google Classroom. And what I love about this activity is my students are able to first draw, and then they can write about what they just learned. If you want to also add in maybe fluency, you could have your students record them reading this story. So I'm going to call this one draw. Okay, so draw the parts of speech. We're going to go ahead and assign it. And so as my students get a copy of this activity, they're going to draw 6 different prepositions. So they might draw, right, something over the log, something under the tree. Okay, so again, they're using those different prepositions. They have to use a certain number. Then what happens is they're going to write a paragraph using what they just explored, using those prepositions in it. So again, they're going to come in here. They're going to open that up with Kami. They begin to draw. So maybe they have a ball. They're going to throw it, over the bench. So they grab their drawing tool. Person. Ball. They're throwing it over the bench, right? And then after it went in the bench, it rolled under something. Students will come in here and they're going to write their story right here. And again, what I love about these different activities is I can have my students underline important words that they use or use that markup tool, and they're able to highlight those important words that they need to highlight. So it can be a great way for you to show, okay, have we learned about prepositions or not? And so again, you can use all the different parts of speech to help your students with this activity. All you need is a number. Another really cool activity is using 8 parts. And so 8 parts is a great way. It's an Edu protocol where your students are going to have all 8 parts of speech. So you might notice down here that we've got this extra page, and you can assign it to your students, or you can come up here to this little toolbar and go to split and merge. And so what I'm able to do in split and merge is I can actually remove that second part of the directions. And so when I come in here to split and merge, I can hit next, and I can say, oh, I don't want that page. And then I can export it and open it back up into Kami. You can mix and match resources with split and merge. So I could take that slide and additional resources, or I could keep them separate. And then I'm ready to share this. And again, I can create that Google Classroom assignment for my students. So one, I might not want all of those directions, but basically what happens is there's all these 8 parts of speech down here. Students are going to write one paragraph in the middle, and they usually have some type of funny picture or meme. So again, if I go to my 8 parts of speech activity right here, I'm going to go into my annotation bank because I believe I have some saved. There it is, 8 parts. Actually, that's my help. Let's see here, 8 parts photos. There they are. I can add a funny photo. My students are going to come up with verbs, adverbs, nouns, adjectives about this photo, add them onto the activity. And then again, I can use that class view to see my students working in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and create this assignment. Every student gets their own copy. You choose your class or your classes, and you're ready to assign that to your students. Okay, and again, you can watch their progress in ClassView as your students are learning in real time with these different activities. Word map. Okay, so now we're ready to reinforce some words with our students. And so I saw this at a conference, and I absolutely love the way that these teachers were using word maps to reinforce skills. Okay, so these are different strategies that students can help with decoding, defining vocabulary, and when they're encountering those new vocabulary words. So what you can do is you'll notice here that I might have just a blank copy. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this. And with this activity, I can go ahead and kind of delete the different activities that I have on here. And so when we have our word, all you'll have to do as a teacher is add your word in that box. Okay, so right up here is where you're going to add that word that you want your students to work on. Okay, so again, I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of some of these, and we have our map. File, I'm going to make a copy of just that slide because, again, I don't want my students to maybe see the examples that I have. Okay, now that I've made a copy, I'm ready to go into that Google Classroom and assign this to my students. So I go into my Google Classroom, classwork, create that CAMIA assignment. When I create this CAMIA assignment, I'm going to call it word map, and I'm going to add this from my Google Drive. Select. And so what happens again is I assign it to my students. They're all going to get their own copy. You could do one word or a couple words that might be new for the upcoming unit. And once my students get this copy for them, they're going to be able to go in to their Google Classroom. They're going to see their word map, and they're going to open this up into Kami. And so once your students have this activity ready to go with their word map, they're able to look at that word. Let's go ahead and refresh. Let's see if it's loaded just yet. There we go. And so my students can look at that word proportional, right? They can count how many syllables does proportional have. So they're breaking this word apart into smaller steps. Okay, so the first step, let me get rid of my word, but I can say, okay, my first word, grab that text box and they can type, is pro, right? The next part is poor. The next part is 10. The next part is AL, right? And so then I can count and say, okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this would be 4 syllables. Then my students write the word again, but this time they're able to use some of the tools. So now I can come in here and I can grab either maybe the shapes tool if I want to circle prefixes and suffixes. So again, they're able to work on our words. They're able to really master those skills that they might be struggling with. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this background. And then again, I can grab those shapes and highlight those key words that are found in here. There we go. Okay. So there we go. My 2 little circles. And again, they're able to highlight those key words such as the suffixes, the prefixes, anything like that. They can also use their own little tools here. They can change the color. They can underline other vowels. And then they're going to think about 1 to 2 synonyms. Okay, so then they're able to come in here again and type in comparable in size, and then they can add maybe an image. So they could do a Google image search, add from their computers. They could even maybe search the images. If you had an anchor chart, they could take a photo of it and add it on here. Or one thing that I love to do, yeah, it looks like we're probably not going to find too many good examples, is I like to come in here and on my screen, if I go back to my teacher screen, my teacher, here we go. My teacher can go into their Google Classroom, find that activity, classwork, word map, open with Kami. And what I can do is I can look at all of my students using that class view, but there's one more button I want to show you that your students can do, or that you as a teacher can do. So there we go, it's loaded. And now what I'm able to do is I can come into this green button up here at the top. And what I'm able to do is I can come in, add media, and I am able to insert a photo from my computer, or maybe it's in my Google Drive. I got 2 of them, so one right there. And then I can go to add media again, go to my computer, and I also want this. And I can drop these notes, update all, update, and every single student is going to get those notes onto their computer as well. So right here, I can see right away that that student got that activity right on their notes. And if I go back into ClassView, every single student got that. So again, I can see what they have added, and then I can add additional resources if I need to support my students in their learning. Okay, awesome. So again, there's so many different ways that we can support our students, and we've covered a lot so far. So I just want to take a moment and just kind of ask you on our collaborative document, how are we doing so far, right? So we've got background knowledge, we've explored vocabulary, we've also explored language structures. So we've covered a couple different things, and right now you have 9 different templates to support you and your students in their learning. And so again, I just kind of want to have you just kind of pause, think about how is it going so far. The link again is right there if you need it. And we're going to keep diving a little bit deeper as we keep diving into these tools. So let me go ahead and grab this back over here. So again, we've talked about background knowledge, we've talked about vocabulary and language structures. I would love for you at this moment in time to just kind of pause for a minute and think about a sticker. What sticker? And I want you to use one of these stickers to think about, okay, what activity are you like, I want to try this tomorrow. So for me, I love the Google and Doodle. Okay, so again, grab those stickers, add them onto the document, just kind of put them down here at the bottom so people can still click the resources. But what are you kind of considering, pondering about as you're reviewing these different activities? So again, we've talked about background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures. Which one are you thinking about? You're going to go to Add Media, grab the sticker, and then plop one of these stickers onto the document to be like, oh, I'm ready to try infographics. And I love the idea of plussing it with maybe using something such as Kami to add audio, add video, add those connections, right? So again, go ahead and pause for just a few moments and make your vote for what activity you're looking forward to try. Okay, so awesome. Love seeing the reflections and ideas that you have to incorporate these different structures into your learning. Now we're going to go into verbal reasoning. And so when we're looking at this, it's kind of dealing with inferences. So this can be a really hard topic for our students. And again, some of you might be like, oh, I'm scared of the science of reading, but really a lot of these activities you might already be doing with your students. So again, a lot of these different activities you might already be implementing and using and helping your students with. So for verbal reasoning, we've got a couple. Spot the clue can be a great activity for you to use with your students. What you do is right here might be just kind of a nice map. Again, it's found in the Kami library. And what students are able to do is they can work in groups and they can highlight their notes or clues that lead to the inference, okay? So again, we've got this template right here. We can open it right into Kami. And with this activity, we're ready to just go ahead and assign this to our Google Classroom. So we can share this with our students using that Google Classroom if we need to. And so once I create this, I'm going to put spot the clues. They will work with their group. So students are going to work together in a group and they're going to highlight their notes. So they're going to highlight what they just read and they are then going to explain how these might lead to the inference. So let me go ahead and assign this to my classroom. See if I can find it. And so again, my students come in, they create that assignment, and then they add their hints right here. One thing you want to encourage is for your students to add textual evidence, page numbers, quotes, resources that help them get to that end spot when they are using this activity. So again, we really want our students to be thinking and learning about and reflecting on their own learning throughout this activity. So it's really going to be helpful if your students are able to take this activity on that spot the clue and use it to really help guide their ideas and their thoughts in their learning, okay? Another one is text clues. So before students read, so before they even begin to read, students are going to have text clues. So they're going to look at the text that they have. So again, maybe it's an article, maybe it's Touching the Spirit Bear. They're going to write down the title. They're going to add an image or use the drawing tool to draw their image. They're also going to come up with a key sentence, okay? So again, this is before they read. So this could also be helpful with using this with background knowledge and what they're going to use with their title, their image, their key sentence. So again, after they kind of do some searching for their clues, after they do some of that investigation, they then will make a prediction. So then they're going to make a prediction about what they learned. Again, students can come in, they can use the text box, they could use a voice comment or even video to explain their prediction and what they think this is going to be about. And again, this is a Google slide, and so you can customize this as needed. You could add the text on page number 1 for your students, okay? So again, you have a lot of options here to support your students in their learning. So let's go ahead and say I have this. I'm going to make a copy of this just to kind of show you some tips and tricks if you're going to do this with your students. Okay, so here's my copy. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to just, let's see here. Will it let me just do a blank duplicate? Let's go ahead and get rid of this. I think I have to go into the edit the theme. Let me go ahead and duplicate this real quick. Let me get rid of this slide. Okay, I just want like a blue background. That's all I want. How do I choose just a blue background? Okay, it does not want to do that. So I'm just going to come here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go to backgrounds and let's see if it will let us do that. Nope. Okay, so we're just going to throw in here a big box to cover this up. Not sure what was happening. There we go. Okay, so there it's gone. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to just go over into the Google world and I can search for an article. Okay, so again, I can search for an article. You could use ChatGPT, whatever you need to do. But again, maybe I want to do Touching Spirit Bear about Ben Michelson. Okay, so maybe I want to find like a article about Ben Michelson, the author. Yep, so right here, I can copy all this, and then I can paste it right here. Okay, and then I can resize it so it fits onto my page. There we go. And I would probably format this just a little bit more because I am a little crazy. But for today, I'm going to go into my Google Classroom and create it as a Kami assignment. And what I love about using this activity is, again, it's building that background knowledge. It's supporting your learners. So we're going to go into Reset, find that activity. And I'm going to call this Text Clues. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and assign this to my students. And while that's loading, I'm going to load up my student account. My students go into their Google Classroom. They're going to go in and find that activity, Text Clues, open it with Kami. Once they open up this activity, you'll notice that the students have the article on top and this down here at the bottom. What I suggest is you teach your students to go to this little eyeball. They can actually use two-page view. And so what your students can do is they can highlight using the markup tool, and they can highlight key words from this passage. And then over here, they can type Touching Spirit Bear. Okay. They can add an image after they read this little passage. They can show what their key sentence is. If you needed to, you could point this out for your students and they could just make a prediction. So again, all of these activities are modifiable for you to kind of choose, okay, I'm going to give them a title. I'm going to point out the image. I'm going to point out the key sentence, and I want my students to make a prediction. Or if you are up to it, have your students, or again, you can rinse and repeat this activity. First time, you might have all three of these filled out. The next time you do it, it might just be that make a prediction. So again, it can be really helpful for you to kind of think about how you want to organize your activities and have your students complete all of those wonderful activities in your classroom. Okay, so the next way to support verbal reasoning is with an inference map. Okay, so another way that you can just do this, and again, there's a resource in the Kami library for you. It's called the bubble map. I'm going to go ahead and open this up into Kami, and I can just put in here an inference right in the center. Okay, so I put in an inference that has taken place from the story or from an article. And then my students will support it with evidence around, okay? Again, you could assign this so every student gets their own copy. You could have every single student working in a group, and then you could compare group notes. But again, you're going to put the inference right here, and then around the circle is where they provide that supporting evidence, page numbers, explanations, justification, all around the circle. So that is our verbal reasoning area. Okay, so again, let me get rid of some of these. And again, that can be just really helpful for your students. Now we're going to dive into our literacy knowledge strand. Okay, so now we're diving into that literacy knowledge. And again, there's so many different activities to support our students with this. This one can maybe seem like it's very, very difficult, but it's actually in a lot of our resources as middle school teachers again. So for the first one, it's a text feature scavenger hunt. And so what your students can do with this activity is they're able to go in and they are going to find all of these different text features. Okay, so here's the notes. You're first going to go over what is a heading, subheading, table of contents, right? They probably should learn this in elementary school, but hopefully it's just a quick review for them. And again, you can have your students take notes, add keywords or vocab words, or you could do it as an entire class. And again, with that Google Classroom, you could push out these updates to your students. So again, if you're using your Google Classroom, that green button, if I'm using this text features and we're taking notes up on the board, I can have all the computers shut. And again, if I come in here to this example, click on that green button up here, then what I can do is I'm able to come in here and I can have my students have all of the notes right on their screen. So again, once it loads up, here's this green button. Add the notes on the board and hit update all, push out those notes to my students. Okay, so that could be a great way for you to be on your interactive board, writing your notes about the text structure. You hit update all, and all of those notes go out to your students. Okay, once they have those notes, your students are ready to get rocking and rolling. So with this activity, they then are going to go on a scavenger hunt. Your students can either, if you have just a textbook, you could have them go through, locate the table of contents. You can make it very specific to the content that you have with that textbook. If you don't, here's more of a generic one. Okay, so again, you could change this. So again, like what page does the chapter on plate tectonics begin? So you could change all of these, or if you had and everybody had kind of a different one, you could just kind of come in here and use this more generic version. But again, it's a great way to have your students begin to learn how everything is kind of organized and supported in their learning. This next one's really fun. Okay, so again, in here, my students can create their own textbook. And here they're going to use their topic, plan their content, develop. You could even do this as a class. So remember that update work. I could create this textbook as a class, update those changes, and then maybe my students fill out a couple of the sections. But again, it's a great way for your students to think about the upcoming unit, and they're thinking about those text features and how the text is organized. So they're going to create their topic. What are we going to be learning about this year, right? What's our plan? How are we going to organize our content? Develop. So again, this is a great way for them to reflect, summarize, and note take what they're about to learn in their classroom. Another way is text structure. And so Cyber Sandwich can be a great way for your students. It's again, another EduProtocol, but we're able to have that visual map of our articles. Okay. And there's places for students in this resource for them to take notes. And so with this text structure, students will have two texts. They're going to be on similar topics, but they're going to have different text structures. So then they're going to compare and contrast how the information was given. Okay, so you might have a text structure where it's compare and contrast. You might have another one with it's cause and effect. Students are going to try to figure out common language, different ways that is organized to support their learning. Using a Cyber Sandwich protocol could be really helpful for them to dive deeper. Now we're ready to go into another area, okay? This one, again, is more for elementary, okay? So phonological awareness. And when we're talking about phonological awareness, I like to think about poems, okay? So you might want to incorporate a lot of these different activities when you're working through poems. So for example, we might have our students identify and highlight sound patterns that are taking place. So they might be looking for different patterns within that poem, and they're going to use that highlight tool as they find them. Another way that you might do this is have your students replace. So here is a two-voice poem. So I really like this template because typically with two-voice, it's kind of like a dialogue where you have one point of view and then like another. So you could use this template from the Kami library and have your students replace the rhyming words within that poem. So they're going to use new rhyming pairs, and they're going to create kind of maybe a funny or new poem to share with the class. So again, this template could be helpful where they have one version of the poem, and then they take out those rhyming words and create their own new version. And again, they're working through that phonological awareness. Another one is creating a visual map of the sounds that they notice in the poem. So just like we underlined or highlighted before, we might highlight or underline those different sounds that we hear within the poem. So again, a lot of times we think elementary for this, but it really does help when we're working through poems to support our students' knowledge. Next area is decoding. So again, there's 3 different activities that we can use to support decoding. This first one is we might just have our students in teams, okay? And with our teams, they're going to grab a card, okay? So they go to that center, they grab a card, And what they do is they might have to use these word tiles. And what's cool about this activity, so I'm going to open this up. It's found in the Kami library. They can use the select tool up here, and they can drag to make new words. Okay, so with those cards, they're going to have different letters on those cards. Okay, and with those different letters, they're going to have to either make new words. You could have a definition, and the kids have to think about the word. So they're decoding the word, trying to spell out the code. But it's just, again, it's a fun way for your students to work together. And if you want to make it digital, there is that alphabet tile words to support your learning with your students. Next up for decoding is writing. So just have students writing a story with different prefixes, suffix, and root words. You could give them a template to support their learning, or you could tell them, hey, go, try this, right? And so again, just getting your students to write out their ideas can be super helpful when they are learning about decoding. Especially we want to focus on those prefix, suffix, and root words when we're dealing with our upper grade students. The next one is using the upcoming text, and they're going to search. So you'll have the article, you'll have a book, and they go on a hunt to search for those words in that article, and they can highlight those key words as they find them. So again, if you're doing it digital, a hunt can be a really great way to have your students kind of reflect and look for those prefixes and suffixes that are going to be found in the story that's coming up. And finally, the last strand is sight words. Okay, so again, a lot of times with sight words, we think elementary. However, with sight words, we can really drill into our senses. And so I love this activity that you could use with your students. And so what happens is, again, you'll create it as a Google Classroom assignment, and students have a word. So you can add the word here. What does it look like? What does that word sound like, feel like, smell like, taste like, right? And so maybe, for example, the word is mountain. Well, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like and taste like? So they're using all of their senses to explain that word that is coming alive. Another example is real life. Where have they seen that word in real life? How have they seen or heard that word be used in responses, right? So again, they're making those connections to the real life. And then word walls. Word walls can be another great way. So here are just some examples. And what I love about these word walls is you'll notice that these colors right here, prefix, they're blue, academic vocabulary, common language, and then maybe it's an extend. So right here, we can build our vocabulary words. And what you can do then is students have to use so many words, you could add points to them. And so you could say, okay, you need to use 5 words from our word wall, and then they have to use those words. You also maybe want to mix them up so it's not automated or focused on that kind of order. So I hope this session was very, very helpful for you to dive into the science of reading with middle school. And I hope you were able to walk away with some strategies. What I would love for you to do is with that next area where we talked about 4 different areas, we explored verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, phonological awareness, and decoding. I would love for you to grab that stickers again and pick what activity are you thinking out of those sections to really try to use in your classroom. So what are you thinking when it comes to sight words? What are you thinking about using? If you need help or you want to talk about how to do this session with your own district, at Kami, we offer free unlimited professional learning. And so again, if you have a Kami license, feel free to reach out to myself or another teaching and learning coordinator, and we would be more than happy to support you with an upcoming session. And the last thing is I would love your feedback. So right here, you can type your name, your email. The session today, I don't know if it's on the list. We'll do, I don't know if I like that. Ready, set, learn. We'll do that one. Kami's back to school basics. Okay, I know it wasn't that session, but that will just help me. And then my name is Stephanie, and I would love your feedback for how you have implemented and what you've learned throughout this process, okay? Again, if you need anything, please reach out. Would love to support you in your learning. And thank you so much for joining me today on our adventure through the science of reading in middle school.